Okay. The tooth. The tooth.
I love you and the weird things you gravitate on, fixate on.
The tooth. We are warming up. If you are watching this at a later point in time, then that means you are watching a recorded live stream. You might have to wait a few minutes before the show officially starts. Feel free to watch us babble as we manually reshare our links to our viewers, or jump forward to the start of the show.
I need to juggle something for work. Yes, of course, I do. Such is life. One moment. Of course, two-factor authentication is so helpful.
Checking for. Stream hasn't hit my Facebook yet. I'm seeing work updates showing up.
Okay.
Good news, I'm also tied to the work account, so I'm like getting people have liked your post. And I'm like, I'm gonna see that. Ah, there. Yahoo! Manually sharing. Two. Okay, shared to the group. Now shared to the feed. Okay, and then YouTube. Oh man, it's not loading. There, YouTube is running. Oh, they have preview images again.
Oh, that's weird. We haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, it popped up with a preview image. We've gotten used to it just being an
The
filler.
covers flash image thing. So yeah, give us a moment as we get things ready. But if you are already there, please leave a comment so we know you're watching. That always helps.
Okay. Feeds are running. Show is officially starting in a few minutes.
I'm just also promoting to my networks. So when we meet. There we go. Now I'm on the YouTube link.
Starting in a few more minutes.
But yeah, we got this. All feeds are up.
Yeah, my nose is acting up. Oh my gosh. I really think it's some sort of sensitivity to the lights.
You're allergic to the
Because
light.
it doesn't make sense that nose gets weirdly itchy before or while the show is in its early minutes.
By the same logic, you could say that you may be allergic to the show.
But that's like correlation, not causation.
Wow, wait. So the lights thing makes sense, but my counter suggestion does not.
Well, the fan is off. So that counters that it's the fan. Because I always react once the electric fan is on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Should have the iPad ready.
For your timer, yes.
Okay, 9:07. Our banner forces me to make sure this is to my left so we don't cover it. There you go. Which means that. Yeah, then we can put the timer here instead.
Okay. Sorry, reporting for work. All right, I should begin.
There. I guess we can officially begin, unless you want to do the thumbnail image first, so it's like done and over with, and we'll forget about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, I have to change the caption title to the title of the episode. And how are we doing this?
I don't know.
You
Just-
never know.
Just
It's
overly react to the stuff.
That's enough. It's like too much. All right, we're gonna roll credits and then we'll start. So, one moment.
Oh yeah! Baduy Pride!
This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, our little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
It's completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. It's a Monday and we talk about games every Monday. Today, though, we're hitting 2 games because we're trying to cover spooky horror Halloweeny games this entirety of October.
And coincidentally, they are 2 games that are both meant for 2 players. But it's a Monday, not a Tuesday.
It's the tooth. You walked right into that one.
Oh my god.
It's the times of tide. Oops. The times of tide and the tides. The tides of madness.
I don't know what games you're talking about because you're supposed to be holding the tides of time and the tides of
I
madness
know I'm saying
and not the times of tide.
I'm affected by madness.
Okay. So, Tides of Time and Tides of Madness are both 2-player games designed by Kristian Čurla. I'm not sure if pronouncing that name correctly. And published by Portal Games.
Portal Games is obviously one of our favorite producers.
Not
and
a sponsor
publishers.
post.
Not a sponsored post.
But then we love them, so we'll just keep talking about them. And I have this weird mission to own practically every game they've ever released. Okay, please don't ruin our copies of Tides of Time and Tides of Madness.
Each game is quite simple in its elegance and yet surprisingly deep in its strategy.
And yeah, surprisingly deep for a very portable game. Tides of Time is one of those like technically you can bring them anywhere. I mean, like they're pretty helpful in that regard. So they only support 2 players, but then around the game is rated to play for 20 minutes if you believe the box. And this is a fairly accurate statement.
So
I think the longest you'll spend is scoring.
So let's open the box and check them out.
So we'll start with Tides of Time because Tides of Madness is a re-implementation of the same system. Okay, what you got?
Let me just adjust it so that there's no room.
Okay,
In Tides of Time, your box comes with a score pad, very thick score pad,
very generous.
because you need help in scoring.
No, but
Okay.
like they technically it can be any piece of paper.
Yeah.
But they gave us a score pad that's very very thick.
You have a punch-outable set of 4 tokens, which act as your oh god, I forgot the term, relic tokens, artifact tokens, which basically help you mark when,
Yeah, what
when
you-
the card was from your previous turn, which will make more sense later when I explain it. And a pack of cards.
And a pencil.
I was hoping for a display, but it jumped out.
No, free pencil in
And
the
a pencil.
box. Okay.
The game comes with oversized cards, not exactly tarot sized, but oversized cards.
Yeah, they're like they're Dixity but fatter.
Each game lasts for 3 rounds, and in the 3 rounds, All the cards are given to the players, divided equally, and then players draft the cards between themselves until 3 rounds have passed. Each round, the players choose certain cards to leave in front of them to form a growing tableau.
Yeah.
And the tableau then scores you points depending on what cards you have chosen. Because, as you can see here, each card has areas and details that, I guess, affect the game depending on which ones you choose to keep.
Yeah, there are several suits for the cards represented by those symbols in the corner. And then, but then each card will also dictate sort of a scoring ability that will be triggered. And more often than not, the ability it scores with is not related to the suit it carries. So it forces you to kind of be clever in that regard in what you put together for your tableau. Okay, you want
Yes,
to
I
say
was
how
right.
many
I was
cards?
thinking it was 18, but I had to double check because I might be wrong. Because
Okay.
I tend to be wrong with the details. But there are 18 cards in the deck, and there are 5 suits in total.
So that's only two more cards than Love Letter.
Each suit has 3 symbols among all the 18 cards. So finding ways to make sure that you have those suits is vital in scoring the best. Cards give you points in such manner, such as gain points for gain 3 points for every crown. Have the majority of crowns and get 7 points. Win all ties. For each suit you don't have, gain 3 points. Gain 3 points for every red tower, and so on and so forth. So by finding what by laying down cards in the combination you want, you can ensure yourself having the most points once all the cards have been drafted. But because it's a drafting game, which is represented by this, each player has a set of cards, and after they've chosen a card to keep, the rest of the cards are handed to the other player, which
Congratulations,
means
this is drafting.
you are aware of what cards you've chosen not to get. Therefore, you know what the other player is most likely going to play, or even better, you can make sure they get cards you want them to
Yeah,
play.
so by the second sequence, you already have at least seen all the cards in play, all the cards that are in your
Mhm,
drafting hands, and then you work your way down to see what you create in your
mhm.
tableau, and
Well,
that.
you have 5 cards each for each round.
But I mean, like,
Yeah.
so, but you've seen all the cards in play,
Yes.
so to speak, and that's really the core of this game, and just trying to figure out what sets do you think you can build, what do you think your enemy or your opponent is
Mm.
going to be building at the same time, and then how you're going to win out for the round. And Toby and I, when we do play this, it's a lot of like, we're building the same thing. It's frustrating,
As you,
but it's pretty
since
good.
the cards are visible once they've been laid down, and since you know which cards are being passed around, the game has that crazy aspect of reading each other's moves and knowing what it is. Since only 5 cards are played, however, on each round, so at the start there will be 5 cards for you, 5 cards for me. We have an idea what cards are not in play. We know the 5 cards we're holding that moment, and as we go through the draft and it starts getting reduced, we can already anticipate what cards may come back, which makes every turn very important in planning your strategy.
But that's just the first round.
Hmm.
So the clincher is that after you score
Hmm.
uh, the round, then you're going to have to figure out which of your current cards in your tableau that you will keep forever, permanently as part of your set.
That card is marked with the relic of the past token, which basically helps everyone remember, oh, that's the card that won't be shuffled back into the deck later when we start the next draft or when we start the next round.
It's not necessary, but
Mhm.
it's a helpful token. All
The
on
relic
its
of the
own.
past token marks the card that you keep, which then can set the stage for the later rounds. For example, you kept the card that gives you a red tower, then you know you already have an edge for that power later where you score points for the majority of the red towers.
Or you keep something that lets you win ties, and then tricky. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of potential there for like how that's going to work out, and that's where the sort of tides of time aspect comes, because you're kind of supposedly representing generations of development, and you keep a particular card
Mhm.
to you as this relic that survives all the transitions and it's still with you. So That happens over the course of 3 rounds, and then so your scoring can get progressively complex.
Mhm.
And then by the end, you would have scored 3 different rounds, and you see who wins based on those points.
And that is Tides of Time already in a nutshell. The time aspect is because there's a relic of the past. And as you play through the game, you eventually build a full tableau of your kingdom, which you can compare to the others. And the kingdoms are nicely, beautifully illustrated. The artwork is quite introspective, and I wouldn't mind using these as visual aids in a role playing game, for
I
example.
was going to say that there's a lot of like inherent narrative to the imagery. So then like you have these mysterious castles shrouded in light, or you have not so fabulous ones in the distance,
And
and they play together nicely.
beyond just having great artwork, they have evocative titles. You have the Citadel of the Prophets, the Great Library of. Oh, I can't read this.
The Manuel. It does also have a very complex cursive font.
Yes. The
Which
Eye of the North,
your mileage will vary depending on your eyesight.
the
So,
Vestibule, which makes you now wonder what it means,
the molehill.
and the Golden Ziggurat. But that pretty much is Tides of Time. We first encountered this not because we owned it.
At a game
Yeah,
cafe.
we were at a game cafe. We were looking for something to play. The
Where's the bag?
the person there was very, very generous in suggesting, why not try this? It's perfect for two players.
And I was like, oh, Tides of Time. I knew I was aware of it as a Portal
Mhm.
game. We just hadn't acquired a copy at that time. And then I ended up getting this as a bundle together with Tides of Madness because why not?
Let's talk about Tides of Madness because this is our horror episode.
So, although Tides of Time and Tides of Madness came out around that period when like so many people were coming up with two-player games, it's like things that eventually led to
Mhm.
uh, Duelosaur Island and all these things. Um, it still decided to add a Cthulhu themed variation of the game, which was like a little surprising.
Starting with the gaming manual itself, made of stiff paper, written with this cursive, almost letter font. It already dives in with theme as it tries to make you feel like you're part of some new Lovecraftian tale.
Yeah, this manual was very evocative versus like the standard glossy paper manual in the base game. And it makes sense as a re-implementation.
In
Okay.
Tides of Madness, you play investigators trying to deal with the upcoming um, surge of secret knowledge and mysteries. And you do this by, just like the base game, drafting cards and playing them and building your tableau. However, a few new mechanics have been added to the game. Let's talk about the tokens.
Well, yeah, and then you might as well bring out the
Yeah.
cards. So like almost any game that has a Cthulhu theme as part of it, um, Madness comes into play with tokens to market, and it's just funny that this is like this, and it's not a dig on designers, but then so many games like when you talk about it being Cthulhu related, then you typically have tokens like this. Because even
Mhm.
Smash Up had like
Yeah.
insanity cards to represent you going mad and all these things.
In Tides of Madness, you still have your 18 cards. You still have the different suits. Of course, now the suits are supposed to represent the different um, terrible entities that are part of the Lovecraftian lore. But in addition to just the different suits and the different victory point conditions that you can play in the game, certain cards are marked with this tentacle symbol on the side, which is not present in other cards, such as this one. Whenever you have these symbols present in your tableau, you earn a madness token. And while having these madness tokens does not mean you immediately lose the game, at the end of a round, if you have the majority of the madness tokens, you can choose from two options: either score 4 extra points or throw away one madness token.
Yeah, which is like it's a funny little mechanic which reminds me of the corruption
Mhm.
in the Skullport expansion of Lords of Waterdeep, where there's a lot of resources and power to be gained when you allow yourself to take corruption.
Mhm.
But if you have the most, which is as corruption escalates, it makes the penalty of each corruption token worse.
And that's because if at the end of a round you have 9 madness tokens or more, you immediately lose and the other player wins the game. Which then makes this such a nice new angle of, I guess, risk assessment and pushing your luck. Because while the drafting is happening, you might totally forget, ooh, those 2 cards will both have madness. And I totally did not keep track.
So
Or you
yeah.
can plan ahead.
So it's not just so you're still doing the same mechanic in the previous game
Mhm.
where you're trying to match suits, build sets, and score points along those lines. But because of the madness angle and the cards that give these madness points, then
Mhm.
it becomes a game of hot potato where you are passing back and forth these things and you're wondering like should I have kept it and acquired the dark power or is it the right thing that I passed it back hoping it won't come back to me and it added a whole new dimension to the game and
Mhm.
trying to figure out when to keep and whatnot. Because if you ignore the madness cards entirely, you are still losing out on a significant amount of points that
Mhm.
really build up over the rounds. So it's tricky.
The card still has evocative art, some of them based on the old gods like Nyarlathotep, others, Miskatonic University, Dagon, Deep Ones, I'm sorry, and so on and so forth. Very different in feel from Tides of Time, so it doesn't necessarily mean that the cards can sort of be mixed together. There
Yeah,
are
they are
no
standalones.
there are no existing formal rules on mixing the two games to work with 4 players,
Or at least that we haven't found any.
but I wouldn't be surprised if it can still work. They also come with yours, core pad and pencil.
Which it's practically the same. Nothing overly thematic about it, except an extra line to indicate how much madness you gathered.
Mhm.
So, and the 9 madness limit is across the 3 rounds, so you'll
Mhm.
just count it throughout the game.
So yeah, that's both games in a nutshell. And with that,
I super love the art though for Tides of Madness
mhm,
because you do get a lot of these. I mean, these great old ones. So look at this Shoggoth with all his pustully
mhm,
eyes, and then of course no. Oh yeah, this one's great, little Agazot, and then of course no Cthulhu game is complete without a version of where is he?
there.
Yeah, where you have your Cthulhu like a Titan walking along and
Uh-huh.
all these things. So I super love the art of the game. I don't know if it really does enough for the theme. So
Mhm,
the madness element is great. It's the promise of power, but then the risk of like corruption and losing in the end.
mhm.
But beyond that, like I don't know if I really got the conceit of us being investigators
Yeah,
versus like this empire building
yeah,
in the original
that's
Tides
true.
of Time. So ignoring that though, because the core game mechanic is still really solid and travels very well, it does make for a great two-player experience and it plays fast
Mhm,
so that you can go back and forth and I really like that aspect. And these are games that could easily fit in your bag, in your luggage. So if you wanted to have games on the go, then it's not a bad option to
mhm.
play.
Both games are quite newbie friendly. People who might not be accustomed to drafting games or
Mm.
to card games might feel a bit, I guess you could say, nervous at first at the thought that drafting, what's a drafting game? But
Mm-mm.
then after the first game session, I would not be surprised if the same player would want to dive in immediately again to try a second or even third round of playing now that they get how it works.
Yeah. Um and it's hard to determine if one is significantly better than the other
Hmm.
because the core game mechanic is pretty solid across both. And the difference between Madness and the original Tides of Time is a little more than just theme because of the game just the system element that they added with the Madness tokens. It does make an interesting difference
Hmm.
between the two, and it deepens the strategy. So, like in our case, I have no regrets that we own both.
Hmm.
I could imagine us just having one, but for the life of me, I can't determine which one that would be. because I generally like both. I don't love one more than the other. Don't make me choose between my children. That sort of thing. So, um, but yeah, I really like it. The game has an official app, which
Mhm.
plays quite well. At least it's for Tides of Time, if I remember correctly. It's tricky. Like many of the app implementations of Portal games, the AI is quite fiendish, and I don't know why I lose so often. For people who have tried the new Neuroshima Hex app and are still playing against like the medium or average
Mhm.
AI, you know exactly what I mean. That thing always wins. So Tides of Time is similar, but the app experience is beautifully done because they really celebrated the card art from Tides of Time, made it full bleed on your phone.
Mhm.
So then you can just really appreciate it. So I like that aspect to the game. What else?
I was trying to think of. So yes, it's newbie friendly. Um, for a horror game, it's not quite there.
Mm.
You don't really feel any sense of foreboding or horror. Even as the madness tokens are rising, since they only really hit you once you've hit your ninth and higher token, you don't necessarily feel it's a bad thing.
Yeah, you will juggle.
Mhm.
It getting someone is inevitable. That's one. But then because there is a kind of hefty reward for having the most
Mhm.
in the first two rounds, you don't feel bad about it. It's like hey points. So I'll take the madness.
But at the same time, both are meant to be very quick and easy to play games. Games like Love Letter, wherein you once you're done playing a round, you might want to start a new one immediately. You might want to like just share stories of what was running through your head while going through the turns. So I think in the end, their lack of a deeper connection to the theme is not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm.
It does make you wish that there was some aspect that connected it more, or perhaps some way that the game could have like offered other alternatives or other options.
I
But
guess.
but for
Sorry.
its price, I think it's fine.
Yeah, and then I guess. Well, I guess that disclaimer though, thinking about given Portal games and their tagline tends to be board games that tell stories. So
Mhm.
I don't know if these two are the best examples of like
Yes.
games they've come up with that have a strong narrative element that is added along. I mean, like you can totally play the drafting without even paying attention to the card names, and you'll get through the game and you're fine.
Mhm.
Even with the Cthulhu variation, um, it's like if you're into the lore, then you'll appreciate the art because like, yay, Young Chogot, Nyarlathotep, all that. But then that's like about it. And there's a weird like commitment to the art to barely feature people.
Mhm.
It's always like these places. I kind of get it here because it was like monuments and things that survive the test of time. But then Tides of Madness is like you kind of expected more cultists and
Mhm.
librarians and things of that nature. So yeah, so I'm not sure where the story kind of went.
Mhm.
Um, Again, it doesn't take away from the game in terms of a game, but I add this expectation to Portal games in general because they do have so many games that tell great stories.
Now, even as far as 4 years ago in Board Game Geek, there has been rumors of a third set to follow. There have been um, discussions in the forums of what could it be, what would it be like. Some have, of course, postulated how Tides of Time actually has a tiebreaker mechanism where there's a card that allows you to win ties, while Tides of Madness doesn't, but then has the Madness tokens as a new mechanic. So it would be interesting if they do come out with a third box sometime. It would make Tides of trilogies or something like that to some effect, where it might be a base game that does have something similar to the Madness tokens in play, but then maybe has something that has a tiebreaker aspect to it.
Mm.
We can only hope to find out if something will come out, but as of the time of this recording, there has been none.
Time. So, I will just cite
Mhm.
that I love the side of Tides of Madness because the age marker, and it's not super clear, is a very Cthulhu-esque
Mhm.
10 plus marker. They varied the little iconography on the side, which is just adorable and just part of like Portal Games design that's very cheekily winking at you, like, "Hey, did you notice this?" And I like that little detail. They have full-on watch it played videos for
Mhm.
this, which is a fairly simple game. But then if you do learn better by watching someone else explain it on a video, then I always appreciate that. That's great. But yeah, I guess that's our Tides of Time and Tides of Madness discussion. Seemingly simple in their approach, but then still a lot of deep, fun gameplay. And yeah, definitely one of the very solid two-player experience.
Mhm.
I have no major complaints.
For a game that's just 18 cards, it does help feel like you're building a civilization, or it does help feel like you're gambling on trying to gain power at the risk of losing your mind. But beyond that, they're just really, quick to learn, fun to play, tricky to master games that are perfect for when you and another player are alone together, especially in this time of the pandemic.
Oh, I guess my last note is that is this normally there is a degree of randomness, of course, because you
Mhm.
are dealing with a deck of cards, and then
Mhm.
normally that kind of randomness can get frustrating because you can end up with a bad hand, and
Mhm.
then you would typically lose in most games. But because of the drafting mechanic, where technically all cards become public information between
Mhm.
the two of you, that kind of balances that out. Because then each round you're working with the same pool of
Mhm.
cards, and how you think your way through that puzzle is really the fun of it. And so I like that aspect that kind of balances out the tendency towards being random and still lets you weigh in with strategy to a greater degree. So good job. Good job.
So there you have it. That's our review and discussion on Tides of Time, Tides of Madness.
Ooh, do we have strategy tips for this?
Count your cards. No, because that's it. With 18 cards, you can sort of like map out what you'll do if you've memorized them. But at the same time, doing it that way kind of removes the fun of trying to figure out what you'll decide.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the very least, I would expect you to try to remember the cards that are active in the round
Mhm.
without necessarily trying to remember all the cards in the deck. At the very least, that's a decent way to play it, and that's boo on you if you can't figure out what's coming down. And it's like, I mean, the question of what card has been drafted will be revealed very quickly because you will both reveal at the same time. But yeah, it still helps if you kind of keep a mental image of what's in play so that you
Mhm.
can figure out what will get you the most points. Okay,
So that's it.
that's it. So, for questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. You can follow us on Twitter, Otobino Shade, RG Sunico.
You should also check out our blog, badaypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us.
Feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below. Let us know if you've gotten to play either of these games and what experiences you walked away with. And then a reminder for this week. So we're doing 3 episodes in total throughout the work week. We have one tomorrow on what are we talking about tomorrow? I can't remember what we scheduled.
It was typical Tuesdays,
It
and we were
wasn't
talking
food.
about plushies,
Plushies. We're talking about plushies,
the psychology of plushies.
and then Friday.
Friday was going to be a horror topic again, so we were talking about horror readables that we
Oh
recommend,
yeah, we're talking
whether they're
about books
comics
of
or
a horror
books.
theme. Yes, yes. So that's what we have for this week, and we hope that you can join us across the episodes. Um, Otherwise, also be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky,
And I'm Toby,
and
and
this
this
is
is
Baduy
Baduy
Pride.
Pride.
Good night, everyone, and have fun.